one of the main things that drew me to your work is I know that magic is, I wouldn't call it a science, but it's definitely a craft and a skill, and it's difficult and you have to practice and you have to take this stuff very seriously without being dogmatic or weird or all the stuff that's like the luggage of this kind of thing. But it's a very special place, and it's so interesting for me to see, like you said, when you come from the manifestation space, because I think the one thing I have never bought with manifestation is the idea that you have to embody and believe something for it to happen.
Welcome, welcome. I am so excited for our conversation today. You all are going to absolutely adore this conversation and get so much value and insight. I know I'm about to get so much value and insight from this conversation. So today we have the absolutely incredible Ida Jackson with us. And she's been a client of mine now we were just reflecting, it's been about 18 months that we've been working pretty closely together. And she is a pure powerhouse. And I'm so excited to have you here so we can dive into, there's just so many areas that you and I align on. And so I think we can talk about a nice variety of topics that really can point to like this power of euphoric evolution and mastering the inner world to create the outer. So thank you so much for taking some time out today to talk with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh. So I don't want to waste any time at all. I want to allow our listeners to really get to know you. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey? Let's start with your journey as an entrepreneur specifically.
So I started my first company when I was 18 years old. I don't know if you're familiar with this term in England, in English, but in Norwegian, I'm Norwegian, by the way. In Norway, we talk a lot about gender quotation, like actively saying, you don't know anything about this, but you're a woman, and we don't have any women in this organization or in this company, so now you're part of the women's quota, like affirmative action. When I was 18 years old, I was a member of the Norwegian Communist Party, like the real secret planning a revolution Communist Party. And in that Communist Party, there were a lot of boys working on GNU Linux, like the really hardcore open software, open standard kind of development. And there was this guy who was like, okay, we're going to create revolutionary software. PS, also a website. So I need the best compadres and cadres and communists to join me to fight this good cause. So they gathered together the 7 most skilled developers they could never have hired for money. That was actually a part of the organization, and every one of them went to be like, one of them is leader of Mozilla Firefox right now, the other one went to create HTML5, lots of technical powerhouses. But the leader of the Communist Party said, cool gang of boys, where's the girls? So they asked, does any one of you have a girlfriend? Of course, 6 out of 7 had never touched a breast in their life. But one of them was like, it's funny. I'm married because I fell in love with this Christian girl from this really bad upbringing. And she had to marry me to get out of her bad circumstances. Of course, she went to Waldorf school and she can't type and she has never touched a computer. And they were like, cool, she's part of it. And that's how I became a member of the internet. So I got the computer. I got 1 book of HTML and 1 book of CSS and 1 PHP learn to code and shell script and just like a black screen with white writing. And I learned to become a developer the hard way. Now, the thing was, of course, the revolutionary software took some time to create, so we started with the website first. And when we had created the website, 10 other youth organizations said, cool, nice website. Can we have a website as well? And then the leader was like, hey, remember, we're Marxists, so our goal is always follow the money. And capital rules the world, so that website's going to be really expensive. And then we had the company. I was like, but I'm the worst developer here, you guys. What am I supposed to do? I guess all the stuff that's not really development. So I guess like talking to the clients and deciding the price and telling people about the company and making sure that you guys don't fight about how we write the code. So then I became a leader and salesperson and marketing person and didn't know it. And then I finished high school and we started creating lots of other software and a couple of other companies as well and made more money. And I was like, and of course I came from really hard poverty, so that money really turned me on. I was really happy walking into a room and being like, hello, we create software and that's really expensive. Would you like some? And of course they would, because this was like 2006 and everyone wanted software really badly. But my dream was always to become a published writer. So then, of course, I discovered blogging. And in 2008, I was named the best blogger in Norway like 4 times. And that year, I also had my first book published, and then I was 21 years old. And from that, being like this tech girl that also wrote a lot of books, my first title was called Girls That Come, and was a trauma-informed queer book about learning to masturbate, because that had been really hard for me growing up in a Christian environment. But that's where my story started. So then I hadn't strategically planned to place myself in basically the hottest growing entrepreneurial environment, because I have been involved in startups since I was a kid. Because of all these boys started several successful companies, and I was like, cool, nice software. You're still going to need some marketing on that, I think. Yeah, okay, I'm coming. Just give mama some shares and we're good. So that was, then I worked with like consultancy and all that kind of stuff. And then in my like parallel career, I have published 30 books. So that's been, and then during the pandemic, I went from like, maybe I should stop being the marketing expert in my environment and see if someone else actually can teach me something about marketing. Because when you're the smartest person in the room always, you never learn new things. And then I discovered the world of online business and created an online business. So that's the main business I'm running now. It's a company doing online writing and marketing courses, where our signature program is called Write Like a Witch, except it's in Norwegian. So that's also been like me kind of healing or finding my way to my very spiritual background, because when I was the only girl in an all-male environment, I was Mrs. Atheist, like really loud and proud skeptic. And then I went out like to have a secret pack of cigarettes and drew a tarot card and did my intuitive practice in complete secrecy. Yeah. So I guess my latest startup that you can look up is called, in Norwegian, it's called Folio, like folio.no. And it was awarded the like best financial technology startup in, I think it was 2019. I sold out last year because that's like the world of tech. But I'm the communist that ended up building a banking service.
Isn't it funny how life just brings all of these really wild signs and synchronicities and opportunities that at first make absolutely no sense, but then you've built an entire empire really off of these kind of wild, kooky happenings. So I just have a quick question for you about that. Like when when one of these events come into your life, like a weird person shows up, or this kind of strange thing that happened when you're 18, and it's like, hey, we need a woman in the room because this just looks kind of weird. And then you're like, okay, I'm just going to throw myself into learning something that I literally know nothing about. What is it that for you makes you even want to do that? Like, do you deal with fear and doubts and questioning when that comes up, or are you like, oh no, obviously this is for me?
I think that's the best question, because I was like, no, it's so interesting you reflecting me to back to me about it, because I think I could name probably 10 experiences like that, like being headhunted to really weird jobs that I was seemingly unqualified for. I was also the head of communication of the Norwegian equivalent of Encyclopedia Britannica for some years, from I was 23, and developed software there. And there was literally like tabloid headlines like "weird sex blogger hired for encyclopedia," and I have like picture of
I mean, now it makes so much sense, but back then, there's no way that that made any sense
no.
to you.
So I think one of the parts that's part of my energetic signature, and I've been like working with this, like you work with gene keys and human design and all these tools. And of course, I'm a 5-2 manifester. So part of my energy from when I was very little was like walking into a room and being like, obviously, I know what to do. So I wouldn't say, also because my background is so freaky and I grew up like lying a lot, and like you do when you're from a broken home, you're like an expert liar. And I talked to someone else from that kind of similar background, and she said, we don't have imposter syndrome because we were actual imposters. So I think having like this aura of I know what I'm doing, and having, pretended to be a grown up at 11 years old, pretending to be someone that was qualified to be head of communication wasn't such a stretch. But how to know it was for me? So I think part of it was actually just this, I would say, this intuitive or spiritual connection where you're like, oh, this is an interesting tingly, the air kind of feels wobbly, and like it feels like time gets stretchy when you get these opportunities, and you're like, okay, that's weird and spooky, and it kind of feels like this tangible sensation. And then not just, oh, I had perfect belief it was going to turn out. No, but I was really interested in jumping out from a plane and knitting my parachute on the way down. And it's kind of, but I also think it's this muscle you develop, because part of like I'm saying, 30 books, you never know how it's going to be received or get turned out. Or when you work with software too, things can't go really bad, but there's also this huge, here there be dragons, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's sort of this things you need to learn to tolerate. But what I've also noticed is that people who have a habit of being stuck are actually introduced to that, the same amount of those kind of moments that I was. But they're always like returning, like looking the gift horse in the mouth and being like, I don't want that gift horse. That's a weird gift horse.
I don't like the packaging of that one. Send it back.
No, that looks weird. That was not what I imagined.
Do you think that you could have planned for the reality that you live now? Like, do you think that the little girl, let's say even like the 18-year-old version of you, do you think that she could have envisioned this based off of your background and where you came from?
No, just hard no. And I mean, I grew up literally in the middle of the forest without indoor plumbing, right? And I went to Waldorf school, which meant that I lived a television and technology-free life. So when no one actually told me like, oh, but your whole life is going to be making weird stuff in a box you've never seen. So I could never imagine that. And I could never ever have imagined how much easier it is to make money and create art than people want it to be. I grew up, everyone was like, you can't do that because it's so hard. You will never be a published author because the world is a horrible place and only very clever people gets to do that. And money is super hard. And then I was like, it felt like pushing through a paper wall. And I was like, really? That's your obstacle? I think I have a few friends that kind of knew how I grew up. Like, it's not that there's no one remembering, but a lot of people are just plain dead, to be honest, which is like what happens. And I remember one of them walking into my apartment when I bought my first, like, really nice Oslo apartment and just being like touching the wall and being like, I can't believe you live here. Okay. That's like your place. So no, I think I wouldn't say that like lack of planning, but I could never have planned and I could never have even imagined. And that's kind of exciting when part of me is like, but maybe now I should create a 5-year plan.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. And I'm like, but I have but it's interesting when you know many people that's actually had a success. I'm like, but it's never because they had such a great 5-year plan.
Yeah, I'm like, where does that work? I don't know anyone actually who had a 5-year plan, followed through with every single step, and then had it result in what they thought it was going to result in, right? Like, either what I've seen is they follow the 5-year plan to a T and it is a dud by the end of the 5 years, right? Or they let go of the 5-year plan and then allow opportunities to come and kind of take them as they come. Maybe they have a feeling or like a direction that they want to go, but they're not attached to, okay, this has to look like this, and this by the time I hit, 5 years from now. And those seem to be, at least from my perspective, those seem to be like the best realities that are created. I've had a really difficult time. I think we can dive
Yeah.
into this a little bit because both of us come from a marketing background. So let's talk a little bit of marketing. I've had a really challenging time communicating some of the magic that I've created, right? And part of that is because a lot of people who've come into my world come through the avenue of manifestation, right? I don't get so many people who are coming from the business space. Most of them come through the avenue of manifestation. And most of the conversation around manifestation is like, you want these things, you have these things you want, and then you're going to manifest them, right? You're going to create them, you're going to, embody the version of you, and so on and so forth. However, what I found with the people that we work with, we end up creating realities that no one imagined, right? Like you couldn't have vision boarded some of these things. And I feel like you've had a life, like even before we met, you've had a life that really is like an embodiment of, I don't know what, do we call it miracles? Do we call it magic? I don't know. But quantum leaps, right? Quantum leap, although most people attach the quantum leap to like, I want a quantum leap, but then they have an idea of like, I want to go from 0 to $5 million in 1 month, right? Like that kind of.
Yeah, I want a quantum leap, but specifically in income numbers.
Always.
Yeah, and then they never realize that, moms quantum leap every time they give birth in a way that's not pleasant or fun at all.
I think we can both agree that's been our experience, that it's not always like a fun situation. So in the last in the last 18 months since we've been working together, you've definitely had some major shifts, some major quantum leaps that for sure were not at all what you expected. Do you mind talking a little bit about your experience?
Yes, I would love to. And I also just have to, I think I have to start with telling my Synarchy story first, as the marketeer I am, because I'm part of Synarchy. That's, I would say, your like magical container that you can say that, of course, there's some videos and a Voxer chat and lots of stuff, calls attached to it. But unlike your regular coaching program, it's actually a really tangible spiritual space that you enter. So it's funny because I actually discovered you through the podcast of Manifestation Babe, which I was kind of binge listening to because I had. The thing is, if you search for me on YouTube, you will find a Norwegian video where I'm like, the law of attraction is the worst thing that was ever created. And it was huge, and it was on billboards when I was like 23 or something. But so I discovered her podcast, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. She talks a lot about the stuff I was angry about. I'm going to heal my relationship to this vocabulary by listening to this excellent podcast. And then I discovered the interviews with you, and I was like, oh, this is interesting to me, because I feel like in the online coaching space, everyone and their mother is very spiritual. But as someone that's grown up in a world where magic is very real and where you have a very strong religious practice, I have always felt that they were all kind of just playing around and I weren't taking them seriously at all. And then I listened to you and I was like, okay, yeah, so this is someone with an actual spiritual practice and this is the real deal. And then I think I was just like following you on Instagram, and you did a live where you were kind of like just like, people want to have short programs and no one really wants to go deep, and just like ranting or something.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I was like, cool. And then I felt somewhere along there, I felt the urge to sign up. And when I joined, you visited me in my dream the same night. And it was kind of this lucid waking dreaming vision thing where you, and it's funny because in my dream I was kind of awake and kind of asleep. So I was on the bathroom and you were like standing over me on the toilet and just putting your hands first in my ajna and then in my throat chakra and just like removing some gunk and then giving me like a huge Queen of Wands magic wand and being like, there, you're done. And then I woke up and I was so terrified because I was like, okay, yeah, so you joined this weird thing and you paid more money that would make no earthly sense, especially at this point in your business, because right then I'd made a fail investment with some tech bros that I worked with before, and I just like paid, I think, 40K for something I could never use, and had just let go of half of my team and was in the middle of moving apartments, and it was like literally did not make sense at all joining Synarchy at that moment. And then I did it anyway because I was like, I'm gonna do it, I feel called. And then I was like, okay, I understand what this spiritual experience was, and I'm still kind of freaked out and sort of mad that I know it's real. Which is like, my favorite astrologer, Boston Kopic, has this thing where he's like, after 25 years of being an astrologer, I still have this moments where I'm like, oh no, astrology is real.
I can completely relate to that. Many times I have these moments like, can't I just go back to thinking it's fake?
And it's like people like, okay, but I bought these crystals and I did this little thing and I'm having fun with it. And I'm like, but when it really happens, it's like, no, but I joined Synarchy, and I think I have now 2 more companies that sprouted after that time. I have the best COO in the universe that I never, and one of the things that I'm doing now is like putting her in charge of one of the companies and actually leaving one of the companies. I also like sold shares for like 200K, and also have been through some of the most terrible stuff in my life. Like, I was pregnant, I lost my baby, and I was being spiritually held through that process by all of you in a way that I could feel and hear, because you have a very, very distinctive laugh.
Now I'm not gonna put the laugh out now.
I'm not going to laugh that instinctive laugh, but like being semi-drugged and like hearing your voice. So it's like when people are like, oh, but how often do the coach answer a question in Voxer? And I'm like, it can't compare to the kind of like energetic attention and just like sort of guidance work that's been going on. But there's also been like I had kind of planned like the list. This is the list of stuff that's been. I would say that I had a list of stuff that's been going a million times better than I thought, and the list of stuff that came up that needed to come up that felt really hard and really difficult at the same time, which is basically it. That's kind of the core of all your teachings, right? When you're like, okay, I'm heading in this direction, and the universe is like, okay, here's all the stuff that can't come along that you haven't been dealing with. Or if you want to upgrade, you're also upgrading your level of problems. So I wouldn't say like join Synarchy, get it more difficult and more awesome life. But I kind of think if I'm going to talk to the audience, if you're someone that's dabbling in dozens different spiritual practices that doesn't belong to you, and you're kind of like following all the rituals and doing all the right things and nothing's happened, yeah, then this is the place where it's actually happening.
I love that you share this perspective, mainly because I think when certain things are said in so many different ways, it's much easier to understand. Like I share sometimes a little bit about no, like this is when I created Synarchy. Let's go ahead and go all the way to what happened, right? Synarchy now is past its 2-year mark. And when I created it, when I create anything, right? When I create anything, there's a consecration practice that I utilize, which essentially creates an energetic container, right? For people to choose to be in or not be in. And it transcends this physical plane. It transcends the calls and the Voxer and whatever. It's when we were talking before, I said that it's kind of like an initiation chamber that really you step into, and it's your entire life, right? So it's activating a shift that happens in a lot of different areas. And that can be kind of scary in certain ways, right? Because there's so many things sometimes that we are attached to, working out a certain way, or growing a certain way, or people that we think that we need to have in our life, and so on and so forth. And we step into this, we raise our hand and we say, hey, I want to be in my highest potential. I want to be living in my calling. I want to leave the impact and the legacy that I'm here to leave, right? Well, those very things that are holding you back from doing that begin to fall away. And sometimes it's a challenging way, because we are being refined, we're being honed. And also a lot of the, when you were talking about that, really, I mean, you were in the midst of such darkness in that moment. I remember so specifically seeing you in dream time and feeling you. And, then we're really talking about like multi-dimensional mentorship, right? We're not talking about just, did you say the right thing? Were you trauma informed? Were you,
Were you triggering anyone?
I'm like, I literally showed up energetically. Like,
Yeah,
a very difficult thing, I think, sometimes for people to understand, but people that get it, people that know, and you get it.
I get it, and I have felt it, and I knew it was real before I entered. But then it's also been like this. I love what you said about like a consecrated space or an initiation chamber, because I can feel it very tangibly. I think that's the word. And I've also had like my powers has been refined and growing in the time. Like you were like, I wouldn't say you held my hand, but like when I had in the spring where my third eye just opened and I had lots of visions, and you were like, yes, hello. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we do. But there's this, in the same way, both this lightness and this seriousness about it, and this being like, okay, this is, I think one of the main things that drew me to your work is I know that magic is, I wouldn't call it a science, but it's definitely a craft and a skill, and it's difficult, and you have to practice, and you have to take this stuff very seriously without being dogmatic or weird or all the stuff that's like the luggage of this kind of thing. But it's a very special place, and it's so interesting for me to see, like you said, when you come from the manifestation space, because I I think the one thing I have never bought with manifestation is the idea that you have to embody and believe something for it to happen. Because I grew up being told that the world was going to end in 12 years and that everyone else except us was going to hell.
And here you are.
So here I am. Didn't happen. And my belief system did not match up to the reality and the opportunities that were presented for me. So I kind of feel like the God or universe or your spirit squad is so much more on your team and doesn't really care about your mindset at all. In a way, when they present opportunities, it's like, I don't know. I sometimes, when I teach these I'm trying to teach this in my writing programs and containers. And then I don't know, have you seen Totoro, the Japanese cartoon?
No.
No, but there's this Japanese cartoon which I kind of love because it's in a Japanese setting where everyone know that spirits are real. So the kids have a spiritual experience and the parents are like, great, let's go light some candle and incense in the temple. And there's not a big deal. But they're like asking the forest spirit for help. And then the forest spirit is like, okay, cool, but maybe you would like to take a bus that's also a cat and can run through lightning. And the kids are like, oh, I guess we could take the cat bus. And that's always the metaphor I'm using when I'm teaching this, when I'm showing this movie clip with a cat bus running and being like, I know you had the plan, but wouldn't you just like to take the cat bus when it arrives?
When the cat bus shows up.
Your job is to get on the cat bus. You don't need to work on your mindset and you don't need the positive affirmation. You just don't say no to the cat bus. It's going to be okay.
Oh my gosh. I need to go now look up this this cartoon.
It's a wonderful cartoon, but that's kind of like the vibe I'm getting with. Which is also interesting to be. Of course, I also love Synarchy and the Royal Shaman because it's such a great company as well. I think it's kind of very wholesome from inside and without. So from like a builder perspective, I really do enjoy it.
Well, I'm glad that you're enjoying it, and we've absolutely loved having you and all of your contributions and the way that you show up. Speaking of the way that you show up, I want to talk a little bit about your essence because we just wrapped up our first round of your quantum business. And, I have a background in business and marketing. I've got a couple degrees. I run multiple successful companies, but the Royal Shaman was mostly founded on spiritual and energetic principles. And now I'm bringing more of the business side so that people understand like, hey, we all have like energetic signatures. And if you create companies and offers and sales and marketing that actually aligns with that, it's more fulfilling. There's more flow. You feel more freedom. And also more abundance comes. But one thing that you really embody well is the continued deeper levels of acceptance of your essence, which is very fiery, kind of like catalytic, a little rebellious, also quirky. And you've like leveraged all of that into pretty much everything that you do. Like there's nothing that you do that is vanilla in any way, shape, or form, right? You have a very unique style. But I'm curious, since we just wrapped up, in a couple days, we have our graduation ceremony. What in that offer or in that container specifically was eye-opening or transformative for you? Like, what did you get from that?
First, I could write a novel, but then, and I have to say, it's one of the best. It's like, it's such a nice surprise, like joining this container and then getting, I would say, as someone that's very well versed in human design and gene keys beforehand, and also into business and marketing, it's the best business marketing human design gene keys fashion course I have ever taken.
I love that. Those are things that don't even sound like they go together, but they do.
I think they're kind of you. I think if you're talking about, I thank you for the compliment, by the way. I really enjoyed the compliment, but I feel like that's part of like your essence is that weird mix. So I have implemented nearly all of it and thought it to teach it to my team as I learned it. I actually got a text from my CEO, was like, but remember what Makhosi said? And I'm like, yeah, okay.
I love that because I have so many stories of how I'm just like this invisible presence in people's companies and also in their houses. Like our former COO, who is also like one of my closest friends still. Her kids, anytime she brings up my name, her kids like roll their eyes, and it's like,
But I love the omnipresence of line 5, but the most eye-opening thing for me was you going through your version of reading the Pearl sequence and just seeing like, okay, so is my this is my company, this is my writing voice. Then just looking back and being like, yeah, when I've been most successful, I've been most true to this expression. So my life purpose is in gate 22, which when you read Gene Keys can be kind of heavy because it's like, it's the special gate. And I'm like, well, thank you for all these references to the apocalypse and all the seals and the sheeps and the what to do with this one. But you opened it so nicely. And then just realizing that my emotional writing voice paired with, like, it's this triangle, and then it's gate 63 on the bottom level twice, which is like you have this emotional voice, and then you have like rational logic, skepticism, clear thinking, inquiry, doubt, but in a good way when it's used right, aiming to truth, and then just pure universal love, gate 25 in the middle. And I've been that combined with the wonderful fashion teaching that kind of left me just raw and emotional in a weird way, which I love, but kind of felt like very, like the Barbie movie leaves everyone raw and emotional. So it was very, very much like, I kind of feel like they were energetically like fused together in some way. And then that has, I wouldn't say it's changed my way of writing copy, but like really refined my way of writing copy. I also had a business program I started this year and closed down this year, which I wouldn't say it's been a mess, but it's been a very interesting learning experience about who I am and what my company is. And so basically, I've used your quantum business to completely just, I think I understood like in 1 hour what went wrong and could teach to my team, okay, so this is what went wrong. And I think one of the most easy to tell on a podcast kind of things were realizing, you talked about the rule of 10, which is a nice segue into money, but like you should charge with the assumption that people will get at least 10 times back what they're paying. And when it's too cheap, it's energetically out of alignment and people get spoiled and cranky and doesn't understand. It's like pearls before swine. Kind of like people don't understand how good stuff they're getting. Like you can't serve Michelin cooking in a junk food place. People won't, there's no use.
No, they'll be mad. They'll be mad at you for serving them Michelin star food.
Yeah. So what happened with the business program? Because I used the rule of 10 to price my writing programs. So when I first priced it, I was like, okay, they're probably going to make 10K of their first book. So I'm charging 1K. And then I saw after a few years, okay, actually, they're getting so much more from it. Like they take less sick leave, they get raises, they're more happy. So I'm going to charge 2K because it's like probably 20K when they go through the writing program and work on their artistic craft. But then I was like, okay, the business program should probably be more expensive. So I wasn't charging, it was more, all my products were more expensive than the writing program. But people were like paying 5K and then earning 5K a week after joining. And then they were like, I'm kind of displeased. And I'm like, why? Why aren't you happy? We're making all this money. This makes no sense. Why are the clients so unhappy and having so great results? So during your quantum business, I actually was like, okay, I'm changing my one-on-one price from, I don't remember what it used to be, but like probably 3K to 10K, and more people bought.
Funny how that works. And this is a 2-hour session, right?
Yeah. a 2-hour session. But it was super interesting because I got DMs from new people, and new people asked, because I know, like you said, my cataclysmic energy, I know I scared the living daylight out of people. So what was also happening when people were accessing me for like, I don't know, a length of time for like 10K a month or something, and we were doing group coaching and all that stuff, they were just getting terrified. And it was completely, I wouldn't say I was doing anything wrong or they were doing anything wrong, but it was energetically off. And I have never found such an accurate toolbox as you've created to just like, okay, there's the problem. That's interesting. So that's what needs to change. And then, of course, I binged. Since I'm a manifester, I just binged through all of it and told my team what we were going to do. And they were like, okay.
You just informed them. Hey,
yeah, and then
I just learned this, and you informed them, and they were like, okay, and then they took it and then applied it.
Yeah, and now my CEO was like, remember the rule of 10? And I'm like, yeah, I learned it to you a month ago.
Oh gosh, I love that so much. It's funny. I swear to you, I almost didn't put the module on uncovering your essence in your quantum business. It was the one module that I was like, I don't know. Like, not many people have asked me about this or really wanted this. I don't know if they're going to really fully get it. And like, overwhelmingly, that was the module that pretty much everyone was like, this changed my life. I feel so seen, so raw, so vulnerable. I'm like completely seeing myself in a very different light. And that inspired me to I've created an essence quiz. I'm going to debut it for the graduation ceremony tomorrow. And then we're going to make like an actual version of that essence quiz so that people can get a little bit of insight into their essence before ever even, like, not even having to take your quantum business. Of course, your quantum business like really goes into it and helps you to see all of yours. What was that experience like for you, uncovering your essence?
I had so much resistance. And the annoying thing about having done this work such a long time, I was like, I know this is resistance. I want this like, so basically what you pointed out to me is that my essence is like the terms you use are gemein and natural, but it's kind of like this mixture of being, I don't know, this kind of weird punky outlaw magician, like more quirky and more weird. And I have literally spent like 2 years trying to be a more classy person. and I was like, okay. But the thing was, so I felt part of me, I mean, I had all the feminine demons approach me like, you're not skinny enough to dress like that. And lots of weird feelings around, but I'm not cool enough, or no one's going to take me seriously, or I don't know. Yes, and also part of like, what does a businesswoman look like, right? A businesswoman should look. And that's been part of me trying to work with several companies in Norway, with my company coming like, hi, can you help me? We're making lots of money. We need stuff. And they're like, but why aren't you serious? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, this copy where you're kind of like, I think we had one sales page once that was like, basically like, okay, are you just going to masturbate? When will there be action?
I love it. I'm here for it. Sign me up.
Yeah, you're like, I'm here for the action. And that, looking into not just my voice, but my appearance and my clothing and my aesthetic. But I've done the work. I went through all of my former press clippings and been like, okay, I can totally see that when I've had the most impact and people has remembered me most, like, okay, I'm a celebrity in Norway. I know Norway is not a big country, but when I've been featured on like the red carpet in my outfits, it's been in outfits that match this kind of essence, right? That's when I've gotten media attention, and that's when people want to take selfies of me. So I could walk through all the pictures and see like, it's obvious, you're obviously right in the way you see me, and all the rest of the Synarchy boxer was like, yes, that's you, and I'm like,
but I want to be professional.
And maybe a little bit kind of scary, but in a very sexy way. So I've been doing 2 after doing that, I've been to like embodiment exercises, both just trying on clothes from my already existing wardrobe. Like, okay, let's go with it, and being like, I can totally, yes, this is right. And then I've infused it into my copy, just like going weirder and ruder, and the conversion are like off the roof. Like started to including more cartoonish characters in my writing and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not censoring. And it's interesting because I teach not people not to censor themselves. That's literally what I'm best at, is to remove self-censorship, but still working with this essence thing. I was like, okay, but I have been holding back. So interesting. So I would say that was really lovely, and also like an eye-opening. And I kind of say, no, I'm not going to say that you should go into fashion as well, but there's this, I wouldn't say it's this hidden side of you, because you're super, I mean, you have such a visual brand, but still, it was, no, but isn't that interesting though? I kind of feel like that should be like a rule of creation, like the thing you're almost removing that feels too out there is the one thing that has to come true.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I feel that way even with the essence conversation, like just as a whole. It's something that I'm in the world of style and fashion, and I'm a former pageant girl, and, I've done modeling and whatnot. I mean, I did not do any like runway. I'm way too short, and I'm also, my shape is not for a runway. However, I love, and since I was a child, I've always loved fashion, and I discovered it through that world. And the more that I played with it and the more that I interacted with it, I'm like, there is really great practical application for understanding this, because this is a principle that manifests in reality everywhere. I love what you said earlier, because I find that there is so much conversation in manifestation around, you have to believe it. You have to believe, you have to da 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 da. And I'm like, my spirituality requires no belief, actually. You don't have to believe it at all for certain things to come into your life. And you actually don't have to embody, right, in order to have certain things happen to you. It's when we align with that essence, those essences that we have, that things naturally come to us. Yes, we could say we are embodying XYZ, but you're not doing a conscious exploration of, oh, I want to have this experience, so I need to embody XYZ. We then instead look and say, actually, here are the things about yourself that you are resistant to, right? For you, it was like, you have this side of you that is mischievous and kind of quirky and eccentric and really initiating energy, like fire starter energy, along with this kind of like relaxed, very kind of earthy way of being. And when we then try to put masks and, costumes on that we think that we have to be in order to be accepted in certain fields, right? We completely dilute our magic and our magnetism. And so you're like getting a real life experience of, no, when I actually turn up the volume on that, the clothing that we wear, I really like those practical applications of like going in your closet and trying on things that you already own, or going thrifting. Like, you don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars to connect with this side, but it's almost it is a form of magic, really, when you are not relying on something externally to make you worthy enough, so on and so forth, but you are instead expressing the truth of who you are, right, through these physical manifestations, your clothing, the way you wear your hair, or drink your like the cup that you choose to drink your beverage in, right? It does matter.
It matters so much. No, I just love what you said about not requiring belief, because I kind of feel like I'm not going to put this on you. But there's so much of what you do that is teaching everyone that grew up Protestant or in a Western super Protestant influenced world about what spirituality looks like if we lose Martin Luther completely.
Yeah, I haven't publicly said this, but I'll go ahead and say it now because I'm going to be announcing it anyway. But always at the core of this, I would say my entire life's purpose is really to support people in recognizing and connecting with the divine in themselves, right? And having that connection, not being reliant on anyone externally, to be able to hear that guidance, follow that guidance, and live fully in that alignment as the highest expression of unique divinity that you're here to be, right? We're all here to be unique, and it's beautiful. And I when you said that, you want it to be like this sexy, kind of intimidating, kind of scary version of you, but when you are yourself, when you are like your actual essence, it is sexy, it is magnetic, it is igniting, even if your essence is, let's say, very sweet. And
Yeah.
is it?
I was tearing up by your purpose and just having you state it here. I love it so much. No, it's like, but it's interesting because my essence has so much humor in it, and I kind of feel like that's one of the things that's also interesting for women to reclaim, because it's definitely this kind of element of surprise and shock and juxtaposition, but also like being very raw and very, yeah, like you said, down to earth. I'm kind of feeling like so much of me is like really white country music mixed with this really quirky, bubbly kind of energy. So that's part of it. But it's interesting what you're saying with clothes, because I kind of feel like my husband is the person I know that's most in alignment without knowing he's in alignment, because he's like sixth generation atheist in his family, because that's how it was. They're so bourgeois that they didn't bother with whatever normal people were doing. He has nearly all his plans in Libra, and it's like, but of course clothes are important. It's actually nearly my religion. You wouldn't. It's like the main thing. It's me. It's my clothes. Why are you not? He's like, what's this self-harm you're doing when you don't care about clothes? And I'm like, I haven't thought about it. Kind of thought it was my feminist project. And he's like, that's a weird thing, not to be super concerned with aesthetics all the time. That's very harmful. I'm thinking about shirts a lot.
I love that. I love that so much. My North Node in human design on my personality side is in 55.6, which is all about spiritual materialism, right? So that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm moving towards, is to really make those connections for people. And it doesn't come without judgment, right? There are people who are like, oh, spiritual people are not uh, this vain to care about how they dress or how they present in the world, and spiritual people aren't. I get a lot of those sorts of things, but we're here to reclaim in many ways.
Yes. Also, like, no, this is, I kind of feel like this is all coming together with the healing work. I mean, of course, Jesus had a natural essence, right? Really scruffy. Very punk, very little fancy dressing. But that's like, I don't know, there's this, no, I'm so interested in this story about what a spiritual person should look like, because I don't know, my factory setting is that everyone is spiritual, they just don't know it. So there's really no unspiritual people because we're all connected. So I mean, of course every human aspect should be part of this, and it's kind of like, but I feel like this is part of healing the feminine or healing the Venus, or bringing Ishtar and Inanna back, because there's this fear of the beautiful feminine, and this fear of the powerful beautiful feminine, and the fear of, no, I'm just like, I'm going back to the Barbie movie, but like the fear and I don't know, making jokes of like I don't remember the Norwegian, I just remember the Norwegian word, but like that the beautiful is kind of ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous to be concerned with beauty. I think that's so much like the part of this patriarchal root system, or like really like touching the poison of being of wanting to attack the beautiful or decorated, or like Venus is all about ornamentation, right, and jewelry and makeup. So I feel like there's something really powerful about, I don't know, if you can think like you talk about pageantry and models, and there's something there when you're like, what if that was something super powerful and spectacular? Yeah,
Yeah.
and not oppression.
Yeah, there's I think probably why the essence work, especially for women. Not to say that it doesn't have the same impact on men, it does, but in a different way. But for women, there are certain aspects of what it means to be feminine that basically all of the powerful expressions of feminine have been suppressed, ridiculed, made taboo, so on and so forth, right? The woman who is in touch with her sensuality, the woman who is able to speak directly and lead, the woman who is really in touch with her intuition and the spiritual, the woman who is a master of beauty, right? Because then that could be utilized
The
against
temptress.
people, right? The temptress, the evil Eve, the seductress, right? And I'm not going to say that it doesn't have its shadow side. Everything has a shadow side. However, when we utilize and we are connected with our essence in a way that is healed, that is for the highest good, then we create incredible magic, incredible impact in the world because that is who we are here to be. But there is a lot of healing that has to happen in order for us to, you know, no longer be resisting those aspects of ourselves, right? I've absolutely loved this conversation. We've dug into so many incredible things. I thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to just share with us some of the things that so much of your wisdom and your insight is really catalyzing for others, and the way that you say things really lands in a different way. So I think that that's going to be some of the feedback that we hear back from this. If anyone wants to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yes, you can search for idajackson.no in one word, but like a dot on the end. But if you search for Ida Jackson on Instagram, you will find me. There's also idajackson.no, which is the Norwegian ending. And I think by the time this podcast airs, I will have English speaking content there. So you'll understand what you're reading as well, and we can connect.
I love it. Well, just so you know, I didn't need the English speaking one. I just go on there and feel you energetically, and I'm like, this is good stuff. I'm going to put a heart on it.
No, but it's like I don't know. I also have people from the royal charm that like, I love this reel. What are you talking about? And I'm like,
I love it. I love it so much. Well, thank you again so much, and I look forward to us having another conversation in the future.
thank you, thank you for having me.